Hello, you're watching Avenue X, where Junkie and Good Storytelling shares her thoughts, knowledge, and occasional weird ideas on stories and how they're told. This is the second video in my series of videos called Drama versus Reality. Last time, we've talked about the bromance and love story between Yongzheng Emperor and his 13th brother. This time, let's talk about an empress in a very popular period drama called A Dream of Splendor, 梦华录, Empress Liu of North Song Dynasty. Unlike another super well-known empress who eventually ended up being the emperor as well of the Tang Dynasty Wu Zetian, Liu is not so well known. Historians tend to compare her to Wu Zetian in a positive light, calling her somebody who has similar abilities, political ambitions, but eventually didn't do the wrong thing of taking the throne herself. Although time-wise Tang and Song dynasties were close to each other, politically, economically, everything considered, these two dynasties are actually very, very different. So it's not entirely fair to compare two empresses coming from these two different dynasties. In Chinese dramaland, we have already seen quite a few screen portrayal of this historical figure in recent couple of years. First, you have Serenade of Peaceful Joy, 清平乐, the drama led by Wang Kai, focusing on the Renzong period of North Song Dynasty. In that drama, this empress was played by the actress Wu Yue, and a particular part of her life portrayed in that drama was when she has already become the Empress Dowager till the end of her life. And then you have that drama, 大宋宫词, Palace of Devotion, led by Liu Tao and Zhou Yuming, which from day one of its airing has received nothing but hatred from the general public, or anybody who's interested in Chinese history, or anybody who's interested in dramas, because of the pure crappy quality of the script writing and its broad daylight ignorance of historical truth. In that drama, Liu Tao plays this empress, and pretty much from when she meets the emperor till the end of her life. Then we have the recent Dream of Splendor, 梦华录, where the emperor and empress only showed up at the last part of the drama. If you happen to have watched any of those three dramas above, you already have a vague impression of who this empress is. Her life, even if you only look at the properly recorded historical records, is already filled with dramatic plot twists. Not to mention the stuff that never got recorded and can only be left to our imagination. As an empress, she got the title because she eventually became the official wife of Song Zhenzong, the third emperor in the entirety of Song dynasty. But she started from somewhere that is probably the most humble background recorded in history of any Chinese empress ever. Now when you go to read history, it will tell you that her ancestors are generals and big powers, but that's almost unanimously agreed in Chinese historical studies as something after she got the power, she dressed up. The reality of her birth was she was just a commoner from Sichuan in a family whose family name is Liu, and unfortunately, even though she climbed so high up, eventually, we still do not know what her birth name is. It has never been recorded in any official historical text. Therefore, history gives her a name called her Liu, where literally means a pretty young woman. Her childhood, upbringing, her real parents, what kind of life she had before she had her capital encounter with the future emperor was completely lost in history. There's a legend about she's actually very talented in dancing, singing, particularly drumming. You will see that also represented in the drama A Dream of Splendor, but that is not confirmed and likely to be a made-up story coming from her political enemies later in her life, trying to put her birth even lower than being a humble commoner as being a music entertainer. But what we do know is when she was 15, she moved from Sichuan with her then husband Gongmei to eastern capital Bianliang. It is likely that this young couple found there's no way out of their life in Sichuan because in North Song Dynasty, Sichuan was a bad place to be. Economy-wise and tax-wise, it's one of the most heavily burdened regions in China. Once they got to the capital, they ran out of money, and this silversmith just got so poor that he cannot even survive. He decided he's gonna sell his wife to get money. Human trafficking in broad daylight by the legally married partner. I just love history and ancient time. We do not have the details about how this deal went down, but it's likely that when Gongmei ended up in the capital, he somehow got to know a very important person named Zhang Qi. He was a subject at a prince's estate. And that prince happens to be the future emperor. At the time, he was only the third son of the emperor and not really the future candidate for the crown. And we can also reasonably assume that because Zhang Qi has been serving his prince lord, he knows what's his taste, what kind of women the prince likes. He probably got to see by himself what Gongmei has on offer and thought this is a great candidate as an entertainment woman, as a concubine, as a servant girl, whatever, to my prince lord, because she just happens to be his type. And he was so right about his lord's taste because immediately the prince fell in love with this woman. History would say that is when Liu He was 15 years old. That would make her born in the year 969. And we know Song Zhenzong, the emperor, later her husband, was born in 968. That would make this couple only 1 year old difference, but the 15-year-old Liu He age is never confirmed. There are different versions of her birth and her age. One version would be she's actually a couple of years older than Song Zhenzong. So take her birth year with a grain of salt. She could be actually older than him. Can you imagine a more dramatic story setup of a future emperor and empress? That's only the beginning of her epic but tumultuous journey of an incredible political life. Although we do not know exactly what time it is, we do know after the prince got the girl, he had too much fun with her. To the point that one day, when he meets the emperor father, the father discovered his third son suddenly lost a lot of weight, looking very distracted, as if his health has been destroyed. So he got angry and asked, "What happened to you? You seem to be losing your life energy." Then he found out his son has recently admitted a pretty commoner woman, and this is the result. He sternly scolded his third son and ordered him to kick this woman out of his palace. Liu He got kicked out because Song Zhenzong has good subordinates. Zhang Qi, the guy comes back into our story, the guy who actually bought Liu He from Gongmei. He took Liu He and put her in his own household, treating her like the most valuable guest, making her life comfortable there in order to not make the prince worry. He himself left his own house and then went somewhere to live for the next over 10 years. What an obedient, loyal, and clever servant of a powerful man. He's almost like the plus level of Chen Lian to Gu Qianfan of Dream of Splendor. Exactly what goes on every day between the now dislocated Liu He and the prince who lives in his palace. Did they still meet without the emperor knowing? Or did they have to obey to the point that they couldn't meet each other at all? But maybe they have messengers passing notes? We do not know. Later, when she did come back to the picture and eventually got to a very important political position, she's known in recorded history as a very well-read woman who can write, who can read, who can talk politics with all those well-educated scholars of Song Dynasty. But think about her birth. She comes from a commoner background of a poor family in Sichuan. She was only 15, roughly, when she got to the capital. It's unlikely she ever received any proper education. Probably she's even illiterate. So how did she got all that knowledge? Well, most likely it happened during those years. She didn't let time just slide and enjoying life's usual pleasure for a woman. She decided, I'm gonna make good use of my time here. I don't know how long that's gonna last, but I'm gonna make myself strong, weaponize my thoughts and mind, eventually to the point that she can have very deep conversations with the most well-learned men of the time in court. North Song is an insane period where there were so many well-learned men. That really shows Liu He, this woman, is intelligent. She's also very self-disciplined. She has ambition. Even in situations of great uncertainty, she would try her best to hold on to something and not let her life be wasted. That's already showing you the great qualities of potential super successful politicians. In the year 995, this third prince ended up being the crown prince due to his elder brother went mad. The other elder brother also was incapable of taking the throne. 2 years later, his father passed away, and that was the year 997. Our prince, at the age of 27, finally became the later known Song Zhenzong, the third emperor of North Song Dynasty. If you are a Mary Sue story writer, you would say once he got her back, he would love her so much, and she's the only person he ever cares about in his life. But unfortunately, we're looking at real history. Although Song Zhenzong really liked her, probably one of the favorite of all the women he's got. He at the time already had officially married wife, later empress, other concubines. He has a harem. Liu He just came in as yet another person. And because of her low birth background, she didn't even have a title until 6 years later. At the time, she's already 35 years old. She finally got her first title as Meizhen, which is not high at all. You can imagine how many dramatic stories have happened during those 6 years of her moving from Zhang Qi's house to Song Zhenzong's harem, where there are already many other women who have much higher birth, politically related to different powerful families, well-educated. We do know, though, she made a friend with one of the concubines of Song Zhenzong, who eventually became her support. This woman is Yang Shufei, so her surname is Yang, and she has a concubine title. She comes from a quite powerful political family, but she had really good friendship with Liu He. We do not know exactly what made these two girls come together and kind of almost formed a pack to fight against all the other women in this harem. You can leave it to imagination if you are a writer of a harem drama. One interesting thing during this was once she got admitted to the harem and became an official concubine of the emperor, what happened to her previous husband? Do you still remember? The silversmith that sold her off. The emperor was a very generous man, and he probably didn't quite care about that this woman that now I have used to be your wife. Maybe it's only the emperor, or maybe Liu He had something to do with it. They decided to turn her former husband into her official brother and set him up for the rest of his life. Previous silversmith, by selling his wife off, earned him a lifetime of security and wealth. It's just that you have to now deny your birth name, have a different surname, and then think of your ex-wife as your sister. Does that sound really ridiculous and almost impossible? And if it's written by a scriptwriter these days, you would say, such bad writing, how does that even? Well, this is reality versus drama, and often reality is just wilder in every aspect imaginable. For the next 8 years, Liu He gradually stepped up, level by level. She never had a daughter, a son, not even ever getting pregnant, recorded in history. So she's barren, and she's already in her mid-30s, considering the around 40 years lifespan average of Song Dynasty people. So we come to a part of the history that has been highly dramatized in Chinese storytelling for the last how many years? The famous Li Mao Huan Taizi story. You would hear that from many years ago dramas, like the Bao Zhen dramas, In a Dream of Splendor. You would also hear the emperor mentioning that you cannot get pregnant, therefore I found other people to give birth to a child and then register that under your name. You would also see that being presented in Serenade of Peaceful Joy, where the young prince realized that the so-called birth mother, Empress, isn't really his birth mother. What we do know is she didn't give birth to any children, but there is a servant girl of hers, her maid, named Li, that's her surname, who did get pregnant by the emperor and gave birth to a prince. And that prince got officially recognized as Liu He and Song Zhenzong's son. And it's likely that this servant girl in real history was willing to do that. She's in this whole thing. And she did get promoted afterwards and pretty much taken good care of till the end of her life. But obviously, you know, drama writers, story writers don't like that kind of normal story. They want something more exciting. So you see the version in a lot of Chinese play where the story will make Liu He a really bad woman who stole the kid from the Li concubine and then swapped it with a cat. And then when the prince grows up, become the emperor, finally turn the case around and punish the bad concubine Liu. That's not the real history. The real history really is just she couldn't get pregnant. There's another woman coming in, give birth to a child, and then put that under her name, which happens very often in Chinese history. And that took place in the year 1010, which would make her officially 41 years old already. In the year 1012, she finally got promoted to Empress. Although during that whole process of getting to the final highest position that a woman can get, there were many powerful politicians in court who were against this Empress decision because of her low birth background. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make the emperor change his mind. If you look at Dream of Splendor, that was the year 1018 when the story takes place, which would make the empress for real already 49 years old. Obviously, the actress is much younger playing this role, but this actress Liu Kejun in A Dream of Splendor, she's still in school right now, Shanghai Theatre Academy. That would make her younger than 22 years old. Although she definitely doesn't look like somebody who is 49, she looks very matured, poised, definitely older than 20. So she's a great actress who has great potentials of playing a wide age range. Coming back to our real history, Liu would be sitting on the empress position for the next decade until she becomes Empress Dowager. During the decade of being the empress, and probably a bit earlier than that, she's already working for her husband as a political advisor, and often actually taking his position when he is unavailable, dealing with all the policies, political orders that goes on every day. It has been recorded that when Song Zhenzong was doing his political jobs, getting all the reports from everywhere, she would be by his side. Also, the Yang Shufei, that concubine, would also be by his side. These two women are the most often recorded person to be by the empress' side when he's doing his job. So you can imagine, over a decade, accompanying your husband dealing with his job, that would make you become an expert of politics as well. Towards the end of Song Zhenzong's reign, he had a lot of health problems. Quite similar actually to the Tang Gaozong and Wu Zetian situation, where the emperor got weaker and weaker. He couldn't physically take care of his job. Then he put all the load on the wife, and the wife starts to become more and more important. And obviously that would make a lot of scholars in court, the men, not very happy. Not saying Liu didn't meet any challengers or ran into quite critical situations a couple of times, almost losing her position, almost getting turned over by the political power in the court. It did happen. She had a couple of episodes with a couple of very well-known good and bad politicians of North Song. To make this video not 2 hours long, I'm not gonna go into details. If anybody ever wants to make a life story of this empress, they probably will put quite a lot of screen time talking about the couple of big political enemies she's got in her life and how she came out winning. In the year 1022, the emperor passed away. She officially becomes the Empress Dowager, and her son adopted, officialized her son, not really by herself giving birth, son Zhao Zhen, ascended the throne and become the well-known future Song Renzong. In the early days of her becoming the Empress Dowager, she still had to fight off a couple of difficult political enemies. Soon she became the most powerful woman in China. It did get a lot of politicians really worried during those years about eventually this woman is gonna become the second Wu Zetian. At the height of the power, she probably can if she really wanna push through. But she didn't. She eventually yielded her power and took a step back and gave the power back to the emperor. She was an Empress Dowager for 11 years, and at the end of her life, officially, she's already 64 years old. She could be a couple of years older for real, let's say under 70. Taking the North Song health, medicine, life expectancy into consideration, in the last decade of her life, she probably is just too old to continue fighting the political ascending ladder to eventually get into the empress position. Wu Zetian also was a long-living woman, and she has very robust health. So that probably is one reason that she can push forward continuously until she got to that position when she's already like 60 something and still very, very healthy. Whereas Liu for her entire life didn't even give birth to one child, so she probably body physical wise wasn't that strong to continue this laborious job of taking care of a big country. That could be one reason. I'm just guessing. It could also just be it's already Song Dynasty, where overall the society's idea of what is the difference between men and women has changed quite a bit from Tang Dynasty. We would consider Tang Dynasty still be a dynasty that has a lot of 武德, fighting military power, getting power through battle, climbing to the top, killing each other with brutal force was something that people actually admired. Whereas once you get to Song Dynasty, it just became more and more ruled by scholars, by people who learn and study. Overall, in Song Dynasty, the societal value, the political atmosphere, and what people think is good and bad and proper started to shift more and more on the side where people don't quite think very highly of brutal force, but they appreciate intelligence and well-learnedness, scholarship much more. The position of a woman in the society gradually started to get lower and lower, and later it will be worse. Song is like the turning point of things. So that could be one reason why Liu E, when she actually can do that, didn't decide to do it eventually, letting herself off easy to enjoy the last couple of years of her life as an old lady. So that is the life story of the Empress Liu of the North Song Dynasty, which has been in parts represented in Chinese dramas in recent years, but not a full coherent one yet. From a storyteller's perspective and a drama reviewer, drama enthusiast point of view, her life is just so incredible, and in a way even more exciting than Wu Zetian's. Because Wu Zetian came from a relatively well-off family. Her father was an official already, and even though at the time not super powerful, she did come from lineage of power. Although the whole marrying the father and later marrying the son thing is also quite a dramatic thing, I'd say. In comparison, I still think Liu E's story is more incredible. She must be such an attractive woman physically, but she also must be so intelligent. And she's so lucky as well to be able to accomplish that. It's also very sad to see that such a high-achieving woman in history didn't even manage to leave her real name. And if you've watched the recent Menghua Lu, you know the whole story started with this rumored painting that has her secret drawn onto it, where people say she's not just a commoner, but she's also a 女乐, so even lower class entertainer, prostitute. This is not confirmed in history at all. It's likely to be written by people who came after her, who wants to tarnish her name. The guys who just do not like a powerful woman. She's a morally corrupted person, one of the common ways of just degrading a woman, even till today. And that's how it works. But that's actually not really recorded when she was around. At the time, nobody really said about that. It really came about later. The cat swapping the prince story, and then she actually is a prostitute instead of a commoner. We see a version of the Dream of Splendor where she did come from an even humbler background, and the emperor actually knows about that. And he didn't care, which is really cool. He liked her, appreciated her because of her ability, not because of her birth. And it's almost an idealized version in the Dream of Splendor when you see how the emperor treats her. In reality, it is also true that the emperor did like her a lot, knowing she comes from such a humble background and didn't care. So for that, I would also give the emperor this. But also, it's not the ideal world. It's not the ideal dramaland world where she's the only one he ever cares about. He had a big harem, he had other women. Probably she just happens to be his favorite. So, reality versus drama, there are things that's more exciting and crazier in reality compared to drama, but then it's still less ideal than Dramaland. That should conclude this video, my second video in the series of drama versus reality, talking about the incredible life story of Empress Liu E of North Song. Thank you for watching Avenue X. I'll see you in my next video. Meanwhile, live long and happy drama watching and happy history researching if that's your thing.